guys, welcome back to Simply Fujica, a place for budding and aspiring entrepreneurs. Guys, I want to welcome you back to another week, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. Guys, by popular demand, today I am discussing how do you manage private pay clients. This is a question that I get from a lot of you guys, and I will say this up front. It's real important that you develop processes around managing your private pay clients. So guys, if that's something that you're interested in listening to, then stay tuned. The first tip that I have for you guys, it's really important that there's agreement between both parties involved in the transaction. So that both parties, meaning you and the client. So notice I stopped short of saying a contract. The reason why I say I don't like to use contracts is because it's going to be really hard. Remember your clientele. Remember who you're servicing. These people are on a limited fixed income. And so let's say the relationship goes awry. Let's say for whatever reason the relationship doesn't work out. What's the likelihood that you are actually going to go after that person and then collect on any monies owed? Now I know that some of you are going to say there's a high likelihood and I'm going to do it. Okay, well, you know, the way I always look at things is you definitely want to make sure that you're managing your business in a way that promotes you having additional business and additional referrals. So I will use that. I will leave that to you as a guide, but of course you have to do what's best for you and your business. So I will say Rocket Lawyer is what I use to create agreements. Again, they do have contracts, so you can create contracts on Rocket Lawyer as well. However, you definitely want to make sure that the rate is included, the date, the time, and the method. What method are you paying you? Now, if you can, because again, you know your clientele, I always push for automatic payment because that person doesn't have to wait, doesn't have to physically try to pay you at the time of payment. So I love Zelle. Woo! Me and Zelle are best friends. If a person can set you on Zelle, they can have it set up as reoccurring, or they can pay you right then and there. It's completely up to you, but again, the important thing is that everyone that's involved in the transaction is on the same page with regards to how much, the amount, and the frequency. Again, the method, that's between you and the client, but I really would suggest having something that's reoccurring. The second tip I have for you, and please don't let it scare you, is make sure that you have a payment policy. Now guys, hopefully you have created a client handbook. If you have not, I definitely recommend that you do create one. Now one thing that I will suggest to you is that your client handbook really and truly should be almost a mirror. I don't want to say exactly a mirror because your policies and procedures is more for you and your employees, right? Some of those policies that's represented in your handbook, you can also transition into a client handbook. And definitely what you want to spell out is your payment policy. The reason why I say that is you're going to have to create a client intake process. Part of that process, of course, you're not going to go over that entire client handbook, right? No one wants to spend 2 hours going over a handbook. But you certainly want to highlight those things that are important to you, and certainly those things that are important to the client. And definitely this is a time while you have that client's complete attention, you want to go over those policies that you absolutely intend to enforce. Payment policy is one of them. So just ensuring that they don't have any questions. Guys, this is a time for you to not leave things unanswered. Remember how I talked about in step 1, you want to kind of suggest that you have a reoccurring payment. This is the time to talk through that. How will that payment be occurring? How are you going to be paying it? Remember, we agreed on the 15th of the month. Is that still good for you? You know, whatever those questions may be. But this is where you really want to hone in. This is not a time to be shy. You really want to hone in, ask direct questions, and you are seeking direct answers. Third tip to this is be direct and immediately address any discrepancies. Now guys, for some this is a little bit harder than others, but I will tell you, At the first time there is a discrepancy, this is time for a discussion. And the reason why I say that is because if you give people an inch, in my experience, people tend to take a mile. And so if you let a person know that you really like to shy away from confrontation, you're really not going to call them on the carpet about stuff, people will use that to their benefit. So you want to make sure the moment someone is late, the moment someone is short, there's a conversation. Let's talk about this. What happened? Because based on the situation, and guys, things do happen. And so while there potentially may be room for grace, you want to make sure that you address that issue head on. You don't have time for anything less. The fourth tip that I have for you is to create reminders. Now guys, I am definitely a calendar person. You guys have seen this calendar in some of my videos, but I am just that person where I am constantly setting up reminders for myself and the things that need to occur in my business. Likewise, a tip that I have for you is to ensure that if you're expecting a payment, and this is something that you might want to discuss when you're doing your client intake conversation, you might want to ask them, hey, how do you feel about reminders? Would you like me to send you a reminder a couple of days before the payment? Especially for those people who are not on board with doing reoccurring payments. If they want to pay you at the time that it's due, if they just want to have a due date and stick to that, then you want to send out reminders. You want to make sure, now listen, that reminder might be a text, right? It may not always be a phone call. It very well could be a phone call. It could be an email. You know, what have you and the client discussed in terms of what is the need? How often do you want me to notify you? How often do you want me to remind you? But again, this is a process that you can put behind the scenes in terms of managing that payment process. Guys, the fifth and final point that I have for you today is to create some type of invoice process. Now guys, this is highly going to depend upon what apps you're using to track your clients. Now I will tell you, you can create invoices for sure. You could definitely create invoices. One of the names is eluding me right now, but I will be sure to include it in the description for you. But QuickBooks comes to mind. There are several invoicing apps that you can use that are out there. But definitely you want to make sure that your logo is on it, the customer's information, including any kind of client account number they have with you, their address, what is due, what is the usually the description, which is usually services rendered between this date to that date. But you want to be very specific, especially if you're running into an issue where a person has fallen behind in payment. So you're not going to give them a bill with a lump sum on there. No, you want to break that out. So this is, you know, payment from services rendered between January 10th and January 17th. Additionally, what's due now is service, you know, whatever the case may be, right? But you want to make sure you're being clear so that the customer understands why they're making their payments, right? And this is also a way for you to ensure that your bookkeeping is up to date. Okay guys, so we have reached the end of those tips. I think the biggest takeaway from this video is you definitely upfront want to make sure that all parties involved are on the same page as it relates to the agreement. So definitely make sure you set that expectation up front that you are going to be managing that agreement and you expect that client to adhere to the agreement. Now, one thing that I will say, and this is a bonus, guys, things happen. So in your mind, you're going to have to be prepared for when and if things happen. So what does that look like for you? And you really have to think through what that process is going to look like. Something I didn't mention early in the video that I do want to mention now before we go is make sure that your termination process is also discussed. Because guys, and I hope this doesn't happen, but there may be a time that you have to terminate your client for non-payment. What does that look like to you? What is that process going to look like for you? What is that process going to look like for your client? So these are things, again, you want to have those discussions up front, and then you, as the owner, you have to be willing to enforce those processes. So Again, I hope this has been helpful for you. Any other home care agencies, if you're watching my video, anyone else who has extra comments, what didn't I discuss? Make sure you include that in the comment section below. But guys, I hope you did enjoy today's video. Make sure you like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that bell notification so that you're notified every time I drop a new video. Okay guys, that's all I have today. Good luck in your businesses and stay blessed.